Okay. Good morning, colleagues from Washington, D.C., in the United States. My name is Brian Morales, and this is the Global Coalition to Address Synthetic Drug Threats, Subworking Group 2.2. I apologize, I'm going to have to rewind my presentation here. Subworking Group 2.2. This is the May 15th session, 2024, East Subworking Group. And I'm going to start off with a few points to get us started. First, the coalition is now entering an interesting phase where we are looking for countries to report the actions that they have taken on synthetic drugs. So today we are formally requesting that participants report on actions taken to address these threats, and we are conducting outreach in a number of ways. First, the U.S. embassies in your countries are reaching out to your foreign ministries to formally request that these actions be reported and shared. Second, we are also sharing the reporting process with you today, and I have a few slides to describe what that will look like. Third, we are going to send you an invitation letter, a formal invitation letter requesting a report of the actions that your countries have taken on synthetic drugs. And what are we going to do with this information? We are going to share the actions that you provide us on the website, and some content will also be shared in the year one report. We are preparing a first year report that will be issued in September at the UN General Assembly in New York. So we want to make sure that we have your accomplishments over the past year represented. And so this covers the period of July of last year, when the coalition started, all the way through September of this coming year, when we hit the General Assembly. So what do we count as an action? What can you report? Well, the first thing you can put in this report is any new practice, policy, strategy, regulation, or law that you instituted in your country related to synthetic drugs. Second, any new engagement that you've launched or any collaboration with the private sector. Next, any financial support that you've provided bilaterally, including through international organization partners, or any in-kind assistance to build capacity of another country or advance an initiative that addresses synthetic drug threats jointly. So cross-border operations, for example, would suffice. Fourth, if your government is interested in hosting a regional or global meeting and has done so or intends to do so in the next few months on a thematic area of interest for the coalition. And fifth is the famous initiatives, the 120 plus initiatives on the website. If you or your colleagues, your country has expressed interest in any or hopefully multiple initiatives, we can also document those, and those can also be part of the report. And finally, any other act that strengthens your country's response to synthetic drugs consistent with the recommendations, we also would very much leave it to you to determine that, and would look forward to having that also documented. So here are the guidelines for submitting in the report. We're looking for up to 2 pages, so it could be less than 2 pages, no more than 2 pages. We would be looking for a format in Microsoft Word, or an email would also be fine, so we can copy and paste. We are asking that you provide us this information by the 3rd of June, and you can email your submissions to syntheticscoalition@state.gov. Now, I also want to share that the final recommendations for the coalition have been posted on the website. Thank you for your efforts last month to finalize them. They are now on the website under the timeline section, and you can just click on the link and see them there. And finally, I wanted to share that this is the last opportunity to present for the coalition subworking groups. If you're interested to present in an upcoming session, we only have June and July coming up. So please contact us as soon as possible at syntheticscoalition@state.gov, and we will do our best to make sure that we're able to incorporate you into the program for the slots that are left. So those are my announcements for today. And if we have any questions, if you have any questions, you can either email us, and we're happy to answer any questions you have on the report or the process from here out. Or if we have some time at the end of the session, then we're happy to do so as well. So with that, I am going to turn it over to our co-chairs, Shane and Amber. And I'll, by way of a segue of introduction in doing so, I'll say that today is a bit of a special program because we're also going to be talking about one of the recommendations from the coalition, which is to promote regional engagement. And I think this is something that we're going to be seeing more and more of over the next few months, actually over the next year of the coalition's work as we begin in October with the implementation phase. How do we convene countries on a regional basis and then have greater discussion, greater engagement with regional forums to then see what the realities are within those countries. So we're gonna have that discussion, but we're gonna do that in the later part of the program because first we have a really interesting presentation from GI Talk. I'm going to turn it over to Shane and Amber for their remarks and then their introduction of Jason Ellie. Over to Shane and Amber.
Thank you, Brian. Welcome, everyone. We have three very interesting presentations this afternoon. Our first presentation today will be from Jason Eli, Senior Expert and Thematic Lead on Drugs from the Global Initiative. And his presentation will be on contextualizing the challenges of synthetic drugs, insights from the Global Organised Crime Index. So welcome. We'll hand over to Jason. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and good morning, everyone. Shall I share the presentation from my side?
Please.
Okay. I hope that's visible to everyone.
Looks great.
Okay. I'd like to first start by saying that it's an honor to have this opportunity to present to you today at this session. And I greatly appreciate the invitation that was extended. In the next 10 minutes or so, I'd like to just go over some data that we, through the Global Initiative Against Transnational Organized Crime, have pulled together as part of a biannual assessment exercise that we do on criminal markets around the world. As an organization, we're focused largely on organized crime, and of course, drug markets being a significant financial component for organized criminal groups around the world. The analysis of a variety of different drug markets is part of this work that we do as an organization. So I'd like to, through the next few minutes, share with you three maps and a table, and in doing so, perhaps demonstrate some of the things that perhaps we don't know or we haven't really quite grasped the severity and seriousness of when it comes to considering the threats that synthetic drugs and synthetic drug markets are posing for us in the world. I started off with a quote from Anthony Blinken that was from this year's CND. And for those of you who had the opportunity to attend this year, I think the focus on synthetic drugs was a welcome change from previous years and a demonstration of just how strongly we're starting to view the threats coming from them. This first map here is a map that shows the presence and severity of synthetic drug markets by country for the year 2023. This map is derived from data drawn from our most recent Global Organized Crime Index. The index is a biannual assessment exercise that we do, and it contains an evaluation of 15 criminal markets, 5 criminal actor types, and 12 resilience indicators, in addition to trying to assess and understand the impact of criminal markets. We also try and assess the ability of states, of countries, to respond to the threats posed by those markets. And you can find all of the index data that I'm referencing here today including a deep discussion on the methodology and assessment metrics, available for free on our website, which is www.ocindex.net. So in the index, all 193 UN member states are assessed. And the index has been going for 3 iterations now. The first one in 2019 covered Africa, and the subsequent 2 in 2021 and 2023 covered all 193 member states. So let's just consider now the results for the synthetic drugs criminal market, which is one of 4 drug markets that we assess. In the index results, 187 of the 193 countries assessed were found to have a synthetic drugs market that negatively influenced their society in some way. I think if you were to ask the question to the general population, how many countries in the world suffer from a pervasive synthetic drugs market, I wonder how many people would come up with 187 out of 193, the majority of countries in the world. And in fact, synthetic drug markets were found to be more pervasive globally than even those for heroin, with only 178 countries in the world suffering from heroin markets. 22 countries, shown here in red, were assessed as being severe in their impact, which is the highest ranking in the index, meaning they possess a synthetic drug market that has a negative impact on all parts of society. That market is highly profitable, and it accrues significant value from the country's domestic economy. Another 48 countries, here colored in orange, were assessed as being significant, which means that the negative impacts are slightly less severe than those that exist for the red countries. Thus, 70 countries globally, or more than 1/3 of the total assessed, have synthetic drug market criminality scores in the highest bands of concern, a fact that might surprise some of you, but certainly should generate serious concern from all of us. This second map is an examination of the change in assessment value or assessment impact from 2021 to 2023. And if there's one thing I can say about this second map, it's that this map should scare us. This is a map that shows how the synthetic drug market in each country has changed in the 2-year period I mentioned. And it's rather simple, really. In the 2-year interval between the last 2 biannual assessment periods, one of 3 things could happen. The synthetic drug market could decrease in severity, it could remain stable at its 2021 level, or it could grow in its negative impact. So what does this map show us? It shows us that globally, the breadth and depth of synthetic drug markets impact expanded significantly in the 2 years from 2021 to 2023. Of the 4 drug markets assessed in the index, the others being cocaine, heroin, and cannabis, over this period, it was synthetics that grew the most in the 2-year period. 100 countries, shown here in red, saw their synthetics drug market score increase in this 2-year period. This means their synthetic drug market worsened. In other words, its impact became more severe. At the opposite end of this spectrum, only 12 countries, shown here in green, saw their synthetic drug market decline in severity in this period to some degree. 81 others, shown in orange, saw their market remain stable, although 20 of these countries retained their stability at the highest 2 bands of significant or severe. So even though the markets didn't worsen, they were already very, very impactive, and they remained at that level after the 2-year period. So to put it another way, in 2023, a total of 120 countries were judged to possess a domestic synthetic drugs market that experienced a worsening or a stabilization at a very negative level of impact and harm over the previous 2 years. So what does this mean? In our assessment, it means that the global synthetic drug situation is worsening and doing so widely and rapidly. This is the third of 3 maps I'm showing you. Now, one of the unique things about our organized crime index, as I mentioned earlier, is that not only does it assess a series of criminal markets in a country, it also assesses 12 resilience indicators for a country. These indicators represent the political, legal, economic, and social spheres of society and the state which, when taken together, measure the potential of the country to provide holistic and effective responses to these criminal markets and their harms. So this map here shows the average resilience score per country, a score derived from the average across the 12 resilience indicators for each of the 187 synthetic drug market countries. Countries in red and orange are those with the weakest resilience capacities. Those in green have frameworks that are adjudged to be sufficient to address criminal market harms, and those in blue are both sufficient and effective in responding to the harms of the synthetic drug market. You may recall that I mentioned earlier a total of 70 countries were assessed as having a synthetic drugs market that was ranked as either significant or severe in its impact, the two worst categories. In the context of resilience to harm, 58 of this subset of 70 countries were found to have a resilience factor that was rated in the lowest two categories, meaning the capabilities of those 58 countries to respond to and mitigate the harms of their synthetic drugs market are, at best, exceedingly weak. It is here in this measure that we find one of the most significant concerns confronting us today as we attempt to get to grips with the global synthetic drug crisis, and that concern is grounded in the significant incapacities of resilience to harm that befall the majority of global states afflicted by synthetic drug markets. Deeper concern going forward rests also in the criminalized structural influence and resilience deficiencies identified among the 10 countries with both the highest level of synthetic drug market influence and penetration and the lowest level of resilience capacities in place. How do we mitigate the security challenges that these marketplaces present to their regional and global neighbors? Added concern rests also in the potential role that the environments in these states might play in furthering some of the more nefarious threats evolving from a rapidly expanding global synthetics drug marketplace. These threats go beyond the public health sphere and embrace regional and global security concerns. Just by way of these maps and the short discussion involved, I hope that I've been able to shed a little bit of light from just one repository of data that looks at synthetic drug markets from a meta level. And I think if we take three things out of this, that the first is something that we already recognize and led to the development of this group here today, and that's that synthetic drugs and their markets are pervasive around the world and perhaps affect a much wider and deeper part of the global population than perhaps previously we had recognized. Secondly, that the situation is indeed getting worse, that these markets are expanding in their criminal influence and particularly in their impact on states as a whole, but also more broadly, regionally and globally. And third, that the inability of large swaths of the global community to respond effectively to this threat, to these threats caused by the expansion of the global synthetic drug markets, is a primary point of concern and is something that, as a collective, as a group, we should be steering our resources and our attention towards. And I understand from the establishment of this group that this is one of the aims going forward. And I think perhaps one of the most important features to do is to work with those states that lack the capacity to surveil, to interdict, and to mitigate the harms of these markets before the situation becomes even worse than it is today. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you very much, Jason. It was a very interesting presentation. We would now like to welcome Milos Stefanovic from the UNODC, who will deliver a presentation on the UNODC's Central Asian National Dialogues. Welcome, Milos.
Thank you so much. Let me just try to share my presentation now. All right. So can you see it now?
Milos, it's in the presentation mode. So if you have any notes, we will we have visibility to that.
Okay, just a second.
Yeah, I got you. I know there's a button on that presentation screen that makes it look different. Oh, there you go. That's perfect.
Okay. Okay. Well, thank you so much for this, and thank you so much for the invitation for this meeting. I'm really privileged to be the part of this working group discussion. So my name is Milos Stojanovic. I'm coming from from Tashkent now, from Central Asia, Uzbekistan. Used to work in the Southeast Asia and Pacific, in the Philippines, and right now I'm handling the sub-program 3 of the regional program for the Southeast, for the Central Asia, specifically related to health issues. In the next 10 minutes, I would say I would try to provide a bit more information about the importance and the value of the regional collaboration with different countries from the Central Asia region, and also the values of those collaborative efforts in terms of the public health. Before I start really discussing this, I will give you a bit of the context here, specifically related to the Central Asia region and the UNODC regional office for Central Asia. As any other organization, actually any other country office or the regional office of UNODC, we are bonded by the general, I would say, UNODC strategic frameworks in terms of really contributing to the global peace and security, the human rights and development, but just really making the world safer from drugs, crime, corruption, and terrorism. So it's a very comprehensive approach and it's actually a very balanced approach in assisting the member states to promote justice and the rule of law and really to build the resilient societies. In terms of the normative areas of the UNODC and also the regional program for Central Asia, there are 5 normative areas of activities specifically related to UNODC. We are seeing those 5 topics of primary concern here. The one is on countering terrorism, another one is on tackling corruption. Then we have the strengthening crime prevention and building effective criminal justice systems, the strengthening member capacities in terms of the transnational organized crime, and the one that we would discuss a bit more today is really how we can really use the balanced, comprehensive, and evidence-based approach related to the world drug problem. The drivers of change and the segment on the left side of the slide would actually answer the question on how we are really addressing those issues. And those are specific strategic directions or the programmatic areas that we are considering as one of the structured ones in terms of really addressing the relevant issues of member states. So it can be advocacy, strategic research and evidence-based initiatives, the policy and legislation, capacity building, but of course the technical assistance is one of the primary delivery modes. The principles of how we are delivering it would probably be a foundation, I would say, also of our work. And it's really more or less about how we are providing the context-specific and prioritized actions and responses to the member states. We are promoting the people-centered approach, and we are trying to form a strategic partnership and facilitating the multi-stakeholder engagement, which is also one of the topics that we are trying to address today as part of this presentation. In terms of the UNODC regional program for Central Asia, we do have a program that has been approved and acknowledged by 5 different Central Asian countries, the Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan, Tajikistan, Uzbekistan, and Turkmenistan. We do have a very, as also presented as part of the our strategic approach, we do also have 5 thematic areas, which are formulated in 5 sub-program areas as well. Sub-program 1 on preventing and countering transnational organized crime. Subprogram 2, preventing crime, increasing access to justice and strengthening the rule of law. The subprogram 3, which we will discuss a bit more, it's really the health subprogram and addressing the drug use, increasing treatment and drug use disorders and preventing HIV. Subprogram 4 on preventing and countering terrorism, violent extremism and radicalization are leading to violence. And we do have a subprogram 5 supporting research, trend analysis, policies and advocacy and forensics. What is really important here to say is that the work of the UNODC is not really structured only specifically related to the subprogram. There are inter-program activities as well. For example, if we are discussing the subprogram 3 related to the treatment of persons who are using drugs, we are of course cooperating with different subprograms. For example, the subprogram 2, where we are trying also to assess the importance and the opportunities for us to address the issues of persons who are using drugs and are in contact with criminal justice system, for example. The subprogram 3 would have 3 outcomes for the regional program for Central Asia. The outcome 1 would address and would help the member states to have an increased access to evidence-based drug dependence treatment and associated comorbidities. The outcome 2 would be really on how the member states would make greater use of evidence-based decisions making in their health and drug prevention policies and intervention. And outcome 3 is specifically related to the provision of the increased access to control medicine for medical and scientific purposes. One of the, I would say, the main functions of the outcome 3 would be specifically on assessment and data collection, capacity building and mentoring, and policy development, advocacy, and support. So now let me just give you a bit of the context here as well, specifically related to Central Asian region. In part of the previous presentation, we have also seen a very interesting geographical presentation on specifically related to the synthetic drugs for Central Asia, and based on the UNODC World Drug Reports, the national drug reports as well. What we are seeing here are specifically the figures related to the opium cultivation in Afghanistan and drug seizures in the region. We are seeing, of course, the smaller amount of the opium cultivation in 2020. This is due to COVID, of course, which we have seen also that has been increased back in 2021. But however, in terms of the heroin seizures in the Central Asia region, we are seeing a gradual reduction in the heroin seizures. And according to the current trends and what we have also understood based on the different UNODC reports, is that the production of the heroin, specifically in Afghanistan, has been drastically reduced. And what we are seeing right now is that the production of the methamphetamine has been really increased in the past years. And this is one of the trends that we are tracking. And it will be tracked also by the UNODC and relevant member states in the countries and in the region. In terms of the Central Asia methamphetamine seizures, methamphetamine manufacturing in Afghanistan has increased, as I said. And what we are seeing here, specifically in the graph on the left side, we are seeing that the figures for 2023, for January to June 2023, are almost, or actually more than half of all the reported seizures of methamphetamine in 2022, and tracking and understanding the trend, what we can really expect at the end of 2023 is actually we have greater amounts of seized methamphetamine in the Central Asia region comparable to 2022. In terms of the drug use treatment, specifically related to Central Asia region, we are seeing, of course, the gradual reduction in terms of the persons who have been registered for the first time in drug treatment centers in Central Asia. However, also we are seeing the downward trend also for the drug use treated in the drug treatment centers in Central Asia, starting from 2006 to 2021. This might be a result of many different cases and many different reasons. One of the things that we have just mentioned is that the drug use trends are changing and shifting in the Central Asia region. Therefore, the opioid use disorders are being less treated than before. But also the countries itself, would change specifically the treatment approaches and might not consider the comprehensive package of for drug dependence treatment as something that might be absolutely relevant as it has been in the previous decade. In terms of the strategies and how we can really approach this better, and what would be really an opportunity for us here to address the specific geopolitical issues in the region, the UNODC has developed sort of a menu of services of the different evidence-based strategies that are related to the treatment of drug use disorders. It's a compendium of, I would say, 12 to 13 different strategies, which has been tested in different regions globally. And this is something that we have been also discussing with different member states in the Central Asia region actively in the past, I would say now already 11 years. One of the international standards and one of the guiding frameworks for the drug use prevention was also heavily considered as part of our initiatives, and it was translated into many family-based interventions and drug use prevention strategies in the region as a successful intervention by different Central Asian member states as well. So how we can really scale up the one of the things that I would like to mention here is really using the international platforms. And one of the international platforms that we are all part of and that we all contribute to is, of course, the International Society of Substance Use Professionals. We, as a UNODC globally, are contributing specifically to the web platform, but we are also assisting the different national chapters in different countries and also in the different regions to address certain priority issues identified by the member states or by the region itself. Here you can see different pictures, and the first one I would say that it's the pictures from the first ISAP conference in Thailand. Some of the other pictures here on the slide are also from Abu Dhabi, and I will present maybe in my next presentation, maybe in July, some of the pictures from the ISAP conference to be organized in June in Greece as well. In terms of the using this international platform, right, and really making the most of it, the UNODC participated in one of the ISAP conferences in Abu Dhabi back in 2002, where we managed to organize a UNODC Central Asian Governmental Symposium on Substance Use. It is a national dialogue platform where we managed to have 19 participants coming from the Central Asia region, out of which 7 were females. And members of the country delegations were coming from Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan, Tajikistan, and Uzbekistan as well. It was a great opportunity for the representatives from the Central Asia to connect with different professionals, but also different stakeholders coming from different countries and different regions. But it was also an opportunity for us to connect better between the member states of the region itself. So in terms of the results of that communication, they had a chance really to report on their progress in the implementation of drug demand reduction activities over the last year in the Central Asia region. And we have discussed some of the identified priorities for the Central Asian region as well. One of which are the drug use prevention and drug use treatment systems, as well as the overview of the national standards for the treatment of drug use disorders. Specifically, the WHO UNODC Substance Use Disorder Treatment Facilities Survey results, which in most of the countries are now presenting a baseline data to track the capacities and the resources in terms of the drug use treatment. Then we have touched a bit on the different topics and the different strategies that might be also of value for different countries in the region, such as the UNODC WHO Stop Overdose Safely initiatives. We also tried to understand how we can really now make sure that all the good work that we have in the Central Asian region, well, quite honestly, can be even better. So we try to understand how the country can make a use of the one of the strategies that is considered as the drug use disorder treatment service quality assurance tool, specifically for the Central Asia region. What we are planning now, and this is one of the ISEP event that will happen next month. We are planning to more or less have exactly the same approach as we had in Abu Dhabi, because it was one of the approaches that has shown a really great results in our work. We are trying now to organize a national dialogue session as well with participants from all the countries, so from the Central Asian region. It will be a 3-day event, and the topics would be more or less the same, because most of the strategies, or I would say the specific interventions and programs that we have started 2 years ago, we have, of course, the continuation in the implementation of those activities. And this would be a chance for us to understand the current delivery in the program, the challenges that they're facing, but also how we can really further on scale up those interventions. We will try to identify specifically a roadmap for the way forward. And that would be also the part of the last day of our event, where we're going to be a bit more engaged in the action planning as well. So in terms of the results, and I would need to say also that these are not only the results because of those events that has happened back in the ISEP events, but the ISEP event and those regional platforms that we are considering as part of our work are really beneficial in way to understand really how we can better work together and how we can scale up our results. In the past 11 years, specifically in the Central Asia region, more than 4,000 trained professionals were trained on the universal treatment curriculum. And this is one of the few regions where we have managed to complete the entire basic and the advanced sessions of modules of the universal treatment curriculum as well. And I believe that this year we will try to finish, and we will finalize the last module, which is the module UTC 22. And with that, all the advanced and basic serious sessions will be promoted and will be finalized in the Central Asia region. The quality assurance mechanism has been one of the active interventions since 2022, and so far it was implemented in the region with more than 100 service providers. As I said, the completed treatment facility mapping survey, now it's finalized, and we do have the national I would say the data sheet cards in terms of understanding really what are now the capacities of different treatment facilities, but also what are the resources and how the connection between different treatment facilities and other healthcare facilities in the countries can be gradually perhaps increased or strengthened a bit, and what would be also one of the referral pathways that might be understood better, specifically for certain countries in the region. And then in terms of the implementation of the family skills prevention strategy, this is of course a part of the and connected also to the I would say closely in line with the international standards of drug use prevention. And we do have a really significant results there, where I have a fantastic figure to show here. And in terms of the reached number of families in the past 11 years, and we are already closing close to the 700,000 families in the region that were reached by the evidence-based intervention as a result of the work with different member states in the region. So in terms of the next steps, we are trying to when we finalize the advanced module, we would try to progress with the specialized series on the UTC, specifically gender-sensitive modules that are also part of the UTC, but also specifically related to the alternatives to incarceration for persons who are using drugs in contact with criminal justice systems. Then we would continue with the Cascade training workshops, and both on the local and the regional implementation. And this is very important to say that the regional trainers are also assisting different countries to implement the training workshops. So we are not really utilizing the resources, the local resources per country. And this is where we see really the regional application or the regional connection as something that is highly valuable. The PICA, the Program for International Quality Assurance in Treatment, also something that has started 2 years ago. We are now in the, I would say, in a sort of a midway implementation sort of framework, somewhere around the step 4. And in some countries, we are at a step 7 out of 13 implementation steps. So this would be something to be further strengthened and also further supported in the upcoming years. And of course, something that is definitely the sort of the underlined part of our work, really, it's a policy development and the provision of technical assistance to member states. So let me just try to conclude with this slide. So what is really the value of the multilateral discussions and also this regional connections and the regional information sharing sessions? I would say for sure that it's maybe one of the most important things is really sharing the best practices, learning from experiences, learning from each other, and learning also on how we can really do better and how we can really overcome some of the challenges, that some of the implementers have faced in their implementation. Then pooling resources and networking and partnership. As I mentioned, beside the fact that we are networking within the Central Asia region, the events such as ISAP is also important to allow for the greater networking with different policymakers, but also with different professionals among and different regions as well. Then developing the regional strategies, and then also the capacity development, learning. Not all of the countries are implementing exactly the same initiatives and exactly the same evidence-based interventions, and really learning from each other in that sense, and trying really to make that sort of one regional voice in terms of really what is important for the region, how to address the regional challenge. It's one of the, I would say, key values of those specific interventions. And of course, the monitoring evaluation for us as a programmatic staff, it's really important to have the group of member states that we are working together, maybe gather together around one specific topics or around one specific workshops or conference, where we would also allow for data sharing, but where we would try also to understand, how we are really progressing and how we are delivering in terms of our envisaged outcomes. So with this, I will try to stop here, and I will be happy to answer any questions you might have. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Milos, for your very informative overview of the work being undertaken, and congratulations on the results achieved to date. We might hold questions to the end if that's all right with you, and we will jump to our next presentation from Oranush Sungawanga, Director from the Drugs Advisory Program from the Colombo Plan, who will deliver a presentation on the DAP Drugs Secretariat's meetings. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I hope I'm audible to everyone. Hello, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, depends on wherever you are. I'm online from Colombo, Sri Lanka. My name is Nut. My full name is Oranut Sankawana. I'm a director of Global Plan Drug Advisory Program. Thanks for having me with you today. And also thanks so much for giving me an opportunity to share our work to this sub-working group 2.2. I'm very pleased to share our global plan work to enhance our networking on drug matters with all of you today. Actually, this is not only the networking that we have. Brian just mentioned in the last session that we also have kind of lab directors global network, which recently have the meeting in Bangkok a few weeks ago, and we have other networks as well. Before I go into my presentation, I'd like to thank Sarah for helping me with changing of my slide during my presentation. And as the internet connection here is not so stable, so please allow me to turn the video off in order to save the bandwidth and also to secure and maintain the good audio system.
You sound great, Nut. Thank you.
Yeah, all right, thank you. Next slide, please. So today I will talk about the National Secretariat meetings. And before that, before we use this National Secretariat meeting name, we call this meeting as a Drug Advisory Program Drug Focal Point meeting. For this meeting, member state will take turn to host the meeting on voluntary basis. Like other drug focal points meeting, the NSM is an annual meeting for our member states to meet and to share the updates of the drug demand and supply reduction activities. And at the same time, we also explore some collective solutions to further collaboration among member countries, especially at the national and regional levels. Next slide, please. As some of you may know that Global Plan has 28 member states at the moment, but in fact our work is not limited to only these member countries. We have expanded our trainings for professionals using our universal curriculum, cover now 6 continents and over 80 countries all over the world. Next slide. Well, back to the NSM. Before we organized the NSM in 2023, last year, we have shared the survey questionnaires with our member countries. Since this is the first time that we have to reactivate this gathering because our last meet of this meeting platform was done in Singapore in 2017. So this meeting is very significant for us to set a milestone for drug advisory program of the Global Plan to refresh our cooperation among member countries. So we also found that a lot of things has changed because of the change on the government structuring. Some agencies has been transferred, some agency has been given a new mandate. And we also found that more than 90% of the delegates are new faces. And that reflects that we need to have a reconnection with everyone again closely. So the NSM 2023 was held for 3 days during 14 to 16 November in Manila, Philippines, with the gracious host of the Philippines government by the DDB or the Dangerous Drugs Board and the Philippines Drug Enforcement Agency of the Philippines. At that time, the head of the Bhutanese government is selected to be the deputy chair. We have 79 delegates from 22 countries join us in that meeting. Next slide. As I said earlier, this is the first met in person after 6 years due to, as I said, due to the restructure of some government giving new mandates and also because of the COVID-19. Our aim for this National Secretariat meeting is to learn about the current trends of drug problems and other related drug threats. And we also open the floor to discuss on the gap of the existing services provided by the Colombo Plan and the services that we have on ground, and to identify opportunity for future collaborations. At the same time, we would like to listen to recommendations for possible collaborations. Those are very useful for us in complying to the needs of the countries at the national level. We also have expert presentation during that meeting, and of course, we promote the global coalition among our member countries through the presentation by INM. Next slide. We have provided time for our working group discussion in 3 groups on prevention, treatment and recovery, and also on supply reduction. The common gap of these 3 groups, of course, because we haven't met for a long time, even though during this time, we have some connections online, but this is like a first gathering in person for after the 6th year. So the common gaps that we found from these 3 working groups are the insufficient resources, the lack of qualified professionals, lack of evidence-based practices and researches, and also lack of information exchange. Next slide. Each group also discussed on their recommendations. The common areas of interest are capacity building, government support, more information sharing, effective coordination, and collaboration, and also utilizing the global coalition platform to improve coordination and exchange of information. Next slide. In line of the previous presented recommendations, some collaboration efforts were identified by the working groups, such as the establishment of the dialogue in Asia and the Pacific, cross-cutting coordination with law enforcement sectors, more cooperation with other international partners, and promote regular meetings to maintain information exchange among member countries. Next slide. Here are some photos from the meeting in 2023 during our National Secretariat meeting. Next slide, please. What we have learned from our gathering this time is not only realizing that the amphetamine types substances and other synthetic drugs remain a major concern in Asia Pacific region, and found that there is a strong call for public health-led policy, as well as the inadequate drug legislation in a country. But we also learned that there are key components that we need to maintain for effective collaboration on drug control matters, such as international cooperation, which is very helpful at all levels, either it is at the bilateral, regional, global level, or with specific international partners. Networking is also the key of many successful efforts, even though sometimes we have challenges with country legislation and formalities, but we need to have it. Information sharing is very powerful to make a betterment of the strategic planning of any implementation of the activities. Ongoing activities and learning experiences are a very practical process for professionals to maintain the effectiveness of the services, as well as the resource mobilization is very crucial for all project implementation, either it is in the form of in-kind mobilization or it is in cash. Last but not least, the policy support or the government support is critical to maintain the sustainability of all project deliverables. Next slide. So before I end my presentation, I'd like to inform everyone that our next National Secretariat meeting 2024 will be held in Bhutan from the 4th to the 6th of August. And the Bhutanese government will host this meeting in Thimphu. Our meeting will remain the focus on demand reduction and supply reduction. This time we will also have working group discussion in 2 areas, which is demand and supply reduction. We encourage participating countries to share the highlights of their countries on drug control efforts through their country presentation, which we will allot time for each country. And also we will have expert presentations, and one of that will be the topic relevant to the global coalition. And again, our organization wish to have a fruitful meeting with our member state again this year. Thank you very much for your time, and thank you so much for your kind attention. Thank you, Sarah.
Thanks very much to all presenters. Can we now open it up for questions in relation to the presentations in the short time left?
Yes. Yes, I'll ask if Hank, if you could stop the recording as we enter now the discussion phase. Thank you.